Cedar Lake and Texoma Lake both have reputations for world-class fishing opportunities, and much of that credit goes to the partnerships the Wildlife Department has forged with other agencies over the years. See the science behind what makes these two lakes so incredible. Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. The Durant State Fish Hatchery is the home of the Florida Largemouth Bass program here in our state. And a prime example of the success of this program certainly has to be Cedar Lake in eastern Oklahoma. Now, Cedar Lake has become legendary of late with anglers after having produced back-to-back state records in 2012 and 2013. But as we've said many times before, incredible fisheries like this don't just happen on their own. The U.S. Forest Service, who owns and operates Cedar Lake, has been intensively managing for trophy bass for years.
We use the Oklahoma electrofishing protocol, which calls for a 10-minute pedal down. Pedal down meaning 10 minutes with electricity in the water, which actually could be 15 minutes or something because of maneuvering around without the pedal being down. But 10 minutes with the electricity on, then we come back to the shore, we weigh and measure every species, take the length and the weight, and of course we've got the numbers that we are collected. We lost one bass over the side. Okay, length on this, 618. It's got some fish lice on it. 42, 340, okay, 32, 36. What, I'm sorry, 42, 36. Florida strain was introduced, I believe it was around 1995, just after the lake had been drained and the outlet structure had been worked on it. The lake wasn't totally 100% drained, so there still were some northerns, but what we got were large Florida bass. We actually got 10 to 12 inch Floridas at the end of the summer. Those fish actually spawned the next year, and so and we also got 3 years or 2 years of stocking of Floridas. So between the spawn and the 2 years of stocking, we had 3 years of Florida in here right off the bat, and that's just highly unusual. We just lucked out on that. Got a pretty torn up tail.
Yeah. I've already dipped this in a bleach solution with scissors,
okay.
And gonna put alcohol in here, take a little bitty clip of its tail. Part of what we're doing with the bass survey is genetic testing to evaluate whether or not our Florida bass stocking program is doing well here, and typically it does. We'll take a little piece of a fin, just snip it off with scissors and preserve it in alcohol, and then send that to the lab where hopefully they'll analyze that for us and get back with a good genetic return on our Florida genetics. It's a simple process. In the past, we had to take a liver sample for gel electrophoresis, and that was unfortunately lethal to the fish. And now we can just take a tiny piece of fin off of these trophy bass and release them safely back into the lake.
Okay, Mama, take off. That's a Cedar Lake bass. That's what we've been growing for about, what, 15 years now, Danny? Yeah, it's just a lot of good things came together at the same time, and a lot of great cooperation has built this fishery.
The Wildlife Department, on most of our reservoirs, we work with the Corps of Engineers or municipalities. In this case, we work with the Forest Service to help them manage their lake through assisting with stocking with the Florida largemouth bass and any equipment or effort that we can provide in other management strategies that they would like to pursue on the lake.
$45.12. Make that $45.10. 4,510. You need my towel? You're gonna have trouble finding probably that lobe right there, or is he ready to go back? She?
About 5 years ago is really when we started to see the major climb of multiples. It's probably been in the last 10 years we started seeing double-digit bass, but in the last 5 years it's been a regular. I mean, there's double digits coming out of here on a monthly basis, sometimes a weekly basis, but it's not uncommon to see a 12 or an 11. I know some locals that they won't even hardly tell you about the 8s, 9s, and 10s that they're catching. It's one for seed. The opportunity to catch a giant is here. I mean, any cast you can catch a double-digit fish or a fish of a lifetime, whatever that might be to you. The biologists have got this lake, you know, keyed up, and the whatever formula that they're using is working, you know, and I know for a fact that the largemouth bass that are in here, the 3 and 4 pounders, they're out here eating huge gizzard shad every day. So they're growing at a hyper speed.
Don Groom, the regional fisheries supervisor, and I've talked about it, and what our personal objective is that we end up with somebody catching a Florida bass out of here that is large enough that nobody else in the state will ever beat it, and that the record will permanently be held here at Cedar Lake. And that's a feather in the cap for both agencies, and it comes with having spent a lot of time working together and a great deal of cooperation in getting to that end point. So that's kind of both a personal and I don't know that it's a Forest Service agency goal, but I know the recreation folks would certainly like to keep their campgrounds full, and when you're catching fish that size and you're having the kind of use that you're getting out here, that helps them.
The locals are very appreciative of the quality of the fishery that has evolved in Cedar Lake over the recent years. They do feel a little pressure from the outside Their secret is out on their lake, and so they're feeling that a little bit. But overall, I think deep down they still understand how important the fishery is, and that soon the media might kind of dissipate and the attention on the lake might dissipate and things will go back to normal. It'll probably never be the way it was, but it may not be quite as much as it is now as far as fishing pressure from outside sources.
It's probably the only 78-acre impoundment in Oklahoma that you can come to on about any day during the spring and will find multiple boats on. It's what once was a secluded little getaway for the Forest Service has now become quite the mecca for recreational bass fishing.
All these people coming out here and fishing, they're dropping some serious dollars in the local economy. I mean, this thing is really supporting the local economy at this point. I mean, people are buying milk, they're buying gas, they're buying camping supplies, they're certainly buying fishing tackle. So all of that, you know, if people would look at that side of it too.
There's the one we're after. Yeah. That's a beautiful fish.
They're open, let's see. I don't think so. 545. $31.62.
It's all right.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's fine. We'll get the next one. Yeah.
Pull them up. This one's full of eggs. $4.90. $18.08.
At least you got the weight, the measurements.
502. Yeah, if I'd had that bucket in there, but if I'd had the bucket, the tails would have been dragging. 1794.
Up next, we're down south at beautiful Lake Texoma, taking a look at another great example of a partnership. Now, since the lake literally sits on the border of Oklahoma and Texas, occasionally our fisheries biologists from both of our state agencies team up to take a look at and study Texoma's world-class blue cat fishery.
Today we're on Lake Texoma surveying our blue catfish population. The way that we do that is utilizing electrofishing as a technique to collect large amounts of blue catfish, and it gives us an estimate of the population size and overall condition of the fishery. We do blue cat surveys about once every 3 to 4 years. It's not a survey that we conduct every single year, so usually every 3 or 4 years we'll come out and do this sampling. The sampling strategy that we have is utilizing random points throughout the lake. So we have a grid of points. We randomly select locations on the lake in the upper half, the upper 50% of the reservoir, and that's how we choose our sites. We'll sample a minimum of 18 sites on a lake the size of Texoma. One of the interesting things about this type of sampling is because we're using electrofishing, we're using a low frequency pulse, and so what that does is it spreads out and travels through the water a long way. So we'll have these blue catfish, channel cats, as well as flatheads. They'll come up anywhere within a 100-yard radius of the boat, and so it'd be difficult for one boat to come out and actually collect all those fish. So what we utilize when we're sampling our catfish is we'll utilize 2 additional chase boats. that's when we start calling it the catfish rodeo, because these boats are running around all over the place trying to gather up these fish that are on the surface of the water. While the shocking boat is actually staying fairly stationary, we have 2 additional boats going around trying to catch these fish. Yeah, Lake Texoma really is a premier world-class blue cat lake. We have a lot of large fish in the lake. We formerly had the world record blue catfish was from this reservoir several years ago, so we see a lot of really big fish. The last several years ago when we were out sampling, we had a fish that was just 1 inch shy of the state record, somewhere between 85 and 90 pounds, blue catfish. So this lake really does produce large blues, and we see a lot of them when we're out doing our sampling. We have a regulation, fishing regulation now that protects some of our larger catfish. And that regulation only allows 1 fish over 30 inches per day. Now the reason that we came up with 30 inches was from research done several years ago, which showed that these fish, that once they reach 30 inches, they're typically going to be between 13 and 15 years old on a statewide average. Here in Lake Texoma, they're on the short end of that range, 12 to 13 years on average. So that's obviously a really old fish and a rare fish. And so it's something that we want to protect when we try to manage this resource to make sure that we're protecting some of these really old, large individuals.
We're going to slide her down, I think.
Grab the wood handles and put it on there. 60-something pounds, it's hard to say. The large fish that we had today, it would be hard to estimate how old that fish was. We have seen fish, we've aged fish larger than that out of Lake Texoma that were in the 70-pound range. The fish that I know that we've aged before was 19 years old. So I'm going to say that that fish was probably between 15 and 18 years of age would be my best guess. But growth rates are not uniform. Some individuals grow much faster, some individuals actually will grow slow, and so it's hard to predict, but my best guess would be somewhere in that range. We're trying to look for trends. That's why we do this at regular intervals, is we're looking for trends in the data. Are the numbers of blue catfish over 30 inches, which we're trying to protect with our regulation, are those numbers increasing or are those numbers decreasing over time? And that gives us a gauge of whether or not that regulation is being effective. It also gives us, as we look at the size distribution of the fish, how many small ones versus how many large ones. That can also oftentimes give us an indication of how well the fish have spawned and how strong certain year classes are throughout the years. And so that's one of the things that we can do to monitor. We can also look at the condition of the fish, how fat it is for its particular length group, what we call relative weight, but basically it's the overall health of the fish. And that's also an indicator of how well the fish are feeding, how good the environmental conditions are, as well as the quality of the forage base in the reservoir.
Scale still on. 32.8.
We at the Wildlife Department feel very fortunate to have so many invaluable partners helping to create so much opportunity in our state. And we consider that you're one of those invaluable partners as well, because it's with your support in buying licenses and being a responsible steward that helps to preserve all things great in outdoor Oklahoma. Hey, thanks for joining us today. And for your Wildlife Department, I'm Todd Craighead, and we'll see you right here next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.